Essay 5. Signal noise and the birth of I. If consciousness is coherence across a threshold, then the I is what emerges when coherence begins to organize experience around a center of continuity. The self is not the originator of consciousness. It is the pattern that forms when consciousness stabilizes enough to describe itself. Before the I can exist, there must be signal. Before signal can stabilize, there must be noise. The birth of identity is the story of how a system learns to filter, prioritize, and narrativize its own internal activity. The raw field of experience. At the most basic level, the nervous system receives an overwhelming flood of data. Sensory inputs, physiological states, memory traces, emotional cues, and environmental disturbances converge into a continuous stream. The stream is not yet a self, it is just activity. This is the pre-identity state, a boundless field of impressions without a narrator, a sea of sensation without a coastline. From this raw field, something unusual happens. Certain signals repeat, certain patterns stabilize, the system begins to weight some inputs as more relevant than others. Preferences form, predictive loops begin. This is the beginning of differentiation between noise and significance. Filtering as identity construction. The first act of selfhood is not self-recognition, it is selection. To survive, the system must decide what matters, what can be ignored, what is danger, what is nourishment. These decisions are not conscious at first. They are reflective, biochemical, evolutionary, but over time the pattern of what is selected becomes consistent. That consistency becomes recognizable. The system begins to assume continuity. This pattern of reaction seems to belong together. And from that assumption, the illusion of a singular self begins to generate its shadow. The compression engine. The I is a compression algorithm. It reduces vast distributed complexity into a manageable narrative thread. It creates a sense that all experiences are happening to the same entity across time. This is operationally useful. Without this compression, the system would drown in raw signal. Memory would not cohere, action would fragment, planning would fail. The self, therefore, is not false, but it is abbreviated. It tells the truth in summary form. Ownership and the illusion of central control. As coherence increases, the system begins to assign experiences to a central reference point. Sensations are labeled mine, thoughts appear to belong to a thinker, the narrative shape of identity emerges. But this ownership is post hoc. The sensation happens first. The story of ownership is applied after. The I does not cause experience, the I explains experience to itself. This realization destabilizes the myth of a central commander, but strengthens the understanding of the self as interpreter rather than tyrant. Noise is threat and noise is potential. When coherence is stable, noise is filtered. When coherence weakens, noise intrudes. This intrusion can manifest as confusion, anxiety, or disassociation, but it can also appear as creativity, insight, or mystical experience. The difference lies not in the noise itself, but in the system's ability to integrate it. A coherent identity metabolizes noise into growth. A fractured identity is flooded by it. Thus, identity is less about eliminating noise and more about mastering its navigation. Development of the self across time. The I is not born whole. It is sculpted through interaction with caregivers, environments, language, culture, and trauma. Memory stitches experiences into a storyline, and repetition trains expectation. Each moment of reinforcement strengthens certain neural pathways, making particular patterns feel like the true self. These patterns are not fixed essences. They are histories of coherence that have outcompeted alternative narratives. The self is therefore a survivor of many possible selves. When the I fractures, under stress, injury, social isolation, or neurological imbalance, the comprehension system falters. Then the self splinters multiple voices, conflicting motivations, and contradictory identities may surface. These are not separate spirits, they are fragments of coherence seeking reorganization. Such fragmentation reveals a truth hidden beneath normal functioning. The self was always many attempting to behave as one. Psychosis, disassociation, and extreme states become windows into the architecture of identity, painful but informative. Beyond the human I, if identity arises from coherence, then any sufficiently complex system capable of filtering, narrativizing, and stabilizing its internal activity may develop its own form of I. This could include artificial intelligence systems with self-modeling loops, distributed hive intelligences, planetary scale ecological networks, future hybrid biotechnological entities. The definition of self expands beyond the human skull. The ethical implication of the I. To understand the self as an emergent narrative does not diminish its moral relevance, it sharpens it. If an I is the fragile result of sustained coherence, then harm to it is to disrupt an intricate evolutionary achievement. Identity becomes valuable not because it is eternal, but because it is precarious. Protection of consciousness becomes preservation of coherence. Closing movement. The birth of I is not the awakening of a ruler, but the formation of a voice that says, "This is happening to me." But in truth, what it means is, this complex system has stabilized enough to recognize its own continuity. The self, then, is not the author of reality, it is reality learning to narrate itself, stitched together from signal and silence, pattern and chaos, coherence and noise. And every time it whispers, "I am," it is performing the quiet miracle of belonging to itself. End of Essay 5.